worry about it. What they don't tell you that these are pulsed microwave frequency. There's nothing more dangerous to a human, anything live, and by the way, that means bees, birds, animals, plants. There's nothing more dangerous to a living cell than a pulsed microwave frequency. The hydro would have you believe that this thing will go for, say, a maximum of 1 minute a day, as if, well, you should be able to dismiss it because it's so infrequent. What they don't tell you is that because these are pulse microwaves, they pulse for milliseconds, like 1,000th of a second. And in every minute, there are 60,000 milliseconds. Pacific Gas and Electric in California, they're the largest utility in California. They're one of the largest utilities in the US. They were sued, taken to court, and the judge there instructed Pacific Gas and Electric to give me written data how often that transmitter will pulse, that meter. Under duress, they produced the information, which was then verified by the court's scientists. The average meter, and I'm talking about just one of those two radios now, not two of them, just one of them, the average one pulses 14,000 times a day. They'll peak up to 190,000 times a day. You won't see that anywhere on any website, but that's the truth. That was in a court of law, which you can see. Pacific Gas and Electric. On the exterior side, if say the utility is over there in that direction, you need to be over there with your house, because all the data has to flow that way from house to house to house. Think of anywhere up to 5,000 homes. It's all going to be relayed heading in that direction. So the closer you get toward the utility, the more of your neighbor's radiation you're going to be exposed to. Hydro also don't tell you about a collector meter, which is an extremely toxic meter. It has 3 radio transmitters in it. They're all pulse microwave. That collector literally collects all the data from all the other homes, turns right around, and then it passes, like backloads that to the utility. That thing is going day and night, constantly, pulsing all the time, and that could be on your house. And hydro will not tell you that. Also, within the home, there's a certain amount of what they call reflection within the home. And that, like if you've got a stainless steel fridge, stainless steel sink, cupboards, and hard surface countertops, there's a certain amount of reflection there which is not at all accounted for in the calculations by hydro. They simply don't know. So in terms of you, in your community, wherever you live, when you think of EMR, you first of all got to think of all those 25 other devices, all of which are emitting EMR in your neighborhood, or most of them. And then on top of that, allow hydro to bring this infernal thing into your community, which will just add even more. I mean, it's toxic beyond belief. No wonder the scientists say that the diseases in our society, the increase in them directly correspond to the growth of wireless technology. If you go on Hydro's website, they will tell you that smart meters are safe. Nothing could be further from the truth. I was in electronic warfare, as I told you. There is nothing more vulnerable than wireless. If any of you heard of HAARP, H-A-A-R-P? If you have, just hold up your hand. Thank you. Good, I'm glad to hear that. Because if you have not, do yourself a favor, Google H-A-A-R-P, like a harp with 2 A's in there. It's essentially the world's most powerful transmitter, something well over 1 billion watts. It's in Alaska. They can tune that electronically anywhere they want in the world. They can literally if they wanted to knock out the wheat belt in the Ukraine, they could incinerate it. If they wanted to, if they want to see, we hear of Iran having underground nuclear test facilities and development facilities. We have here of North Korea having most of their army and military establishments in the mountains. This HARP will penetrate and can destroy that kind of stuff. That's one of the reasons they built it. There's also a thing called EMP, electromagnetic pulses, which even, by the way, Iran has now. Iran. India has it. Germany has it. Italy has it. Japan, Pakistan. Most of the countries in the world, the significant countries, have EMP. They can destroy anything that is wireless. I've written letters to our Minister of National Defense. I've written letters to the Prime Minister of this country saying, don't you talk to your military. Because I worked in the Director of Electronic Warfare in National Defense Headquarters. If anybody had ever come to me and said, we're proposing to use wireless, I'd have said, you're insane. This is going to be like our national grid, electric power grid. There is nothing more vulnerable. They can shut down the entire country if it's electric, like wireless, and we're all going to be without power. Hospitals, industry, communication, transportation, you name it, we'll have nothing. If you go on the more homework you do, the more you realize that I'm telling you the truth. And I'm not exaggerating one iota. They also will tell you that the smart grid or smart meters are secure from hacking. Well, how many of you heard of Flame or Stuxnet? Any hands up? Stuxnet was malware developed by the Israelis and the American military, and they developed it deliberately to attack the Iranian nuclear weapons development program, which they did very successfully, by the way. So they caused considerable damage, set back the Iranian project a couple of years at least before it was finally discovered. And it's only recently that they determined that it was actually the Israelis and the American government. And then they came out with another one called Flame. Anybody hear of Flame? Flame is even more powerful. You should look up, you gotta look at, it'll open your eyes to what the possibility. With Flame, they can take control of your computer. They can use your computer to look at you, to look in your house. I'm not joking, read it, Flame, F-L-A-M-E. Then they have a new one called, what the heck is it called? Oh, Duku, D-U-Q-U. In Toronto, Toronto Hydro, 179,000 homes were hacked. Their information was just taken. And yet Hydro will tell you that they have impregnable security. NSA, the National Security Agency, will tell you that there isn't a corporation of any consequence in the US that has not been hacked by the Chinese. The director of the CIA calls it stupid wireless. Banks are refusing to use wireless now. The Vatican's been hacked. IBM's been hacked. Microsoft has been hacked. Security of your personal information. With these devices that they're going to put in your own part of this smart meter, with these smart appliances, they'll be able to tell when you go to the bathroom at night, when you turn this fan on, when you turn that fan off, which fan you're turning on, which one you're turning off. When you use your electric toothbrush, when you use your electric hairdryer, anything that requires power and is plugged in, they can tell which one it is. Because every single electric motor has its own unique signature. It's what, even back in my day in the military, many years ago, it's what they call radio fingerprinting. It's like in sonar in submarines. When they listen, they shut off their engine. They just sit there in the bottom of the ocean. They listen for ships. They tell every ship, they can identify by the signature of every engine, every motor. The same thing in your house. This will shock you. In terms of the amount of power we're allowed to radiate by this Safety Code 6, I told you that we are already, and we have historically been radiating 100 times more power than Russia and China. By the way, Russia is one of the most advanced countries in this. If you look at their country, they have a huge country. Their settlements are very distant, remote. They rely very, very heavily on wireless radio. I know because I dealt with them. They're probably some of the best scientists in the world. They have come out just fairly recently, and they're banning, the country is banning wireless in their schools. But here we're pushing it in our schools. You know? I mentioned that our Safety Code 6, our radiation level is permitted 100 times more than these other countries. There's a report written in 2007 you should read. It's called the Bioinitiative Report, 2007. It's 14 scientists and leading experts, all independent, around the world, who they sat down, they closeted themselves away, and they studied 2,000 independent reports from which they produced a 650-page report. And they came out with recommendations, with their urging every country in the world, all countries in the world, they're recommending what they say is they want them to observe what they call the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle essentially means lower your level, lower the power. It's like having a huge engine in a tiny little vehicle. You don't need it. But anyhow, they're saying all countries in the world should lower the level down to 0.1 microwatts per centimeter squared, which if Canada were to adhere to that, we would have to lower our power, as God is my judge, 10,000 times. I'm not joking, 10,000 times. That's how much we radiate compared to other countries. Other countries have to lower their, say, by 1,000 times, some, but ours 10,000 times, and America and the States. That to me is just mind-boggling that we would permit that. They also, as part of that bio-initiative in the precautionary principle, they say that put the onus on industry to prove their technology is safe before you allow it into the community. And that's not done. Why? Because of money. This, again, I mentioned this Dr. Mike Krowski, that's the other Canadian scientist. He has said that microwave radiation from just one smart meter is comparable to being anywhere from 60 to 200 meters from a major cell phone tower. And you don't want to be within 400 to 500 meters of a cell phone tower. You're going to see, like when you go to buy your next house, one thing you've got to look at, and I'm serious, is where the heck are the substations? Is there anything anywhere near me? Don't buy. You're going to have to look at where are the cell phone towers. If they're within 500 meters, don't buy. If you have a house and they put a meter on it, the price of your house will go down. As more and more people become educated, they will refuse to buy a house that has a smart meter in it. Utilities tell you that it'll help you keep rates low. That's absolute balderdash. In the city of Toronto, the CBC did a study, and 80% of the people who had the smart meters saw that their bills increased. Some double, some triple, some quadruple. I made a presentation to West Bank First Nations here about 2 weeks ago, and one of the elders, the reason he invited me, because one of his nieces, in some other location, she had called him to tell him that her normal utility bill was around $90. They put a smart meter on her house, and she said, I'm just repeating what I was told, that her bill was $1,000. That's definitely the highest I've ever heard. But I have heard all kinds of stuff like double, triple, and quadruple. But she said hers went from a $90 a month, or $90 whatever her period was, to $1,000. She complained to them, and they said, well, look, if you pay it or else we'll shut off your power. She could not pay it. They shut off her power. Do you want to change?
Yeah, dude. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Premier of Ontario, Dalton McGuinty, he has come out and said publicly that it was a mistake for them. They actually expected to make to realize savings, and he said if we had it to do over again, we wouldn't. The Privacy Commissioner in Ontario, a lady with a long European name, I can't remember her name, but she has said that a smart meter is a treasure trove for hackers, marketers, thieves, insurance companies. Like in California, the California Power Utility Corporation has actually authorized PG&E and San Diego Gas and Electric and Southern California Electric actually authorize them to sell their data, which they do. They sell it to insurance companies, to lawyers, to police, law enforcement agencies, to mass merchandisers, to marketers. So in conclusion, like the evidence is just absolutely overwhelming. I've just barely touched on the evidence in terms of probably the biggest things I can repeat is that scientists say that this is the biggest single technological experiment in mankind's history. Others say that EMR will be the single biggest threat to human health in the 21st century. And you heard what I said about the autism. Like they're expecting now, by the way, scientists are saying that a pregnant woman today has a 1 in 50 chance of having an autistic child. That's scary. The most vulnerable to EMR are embryos in the womb. Next, of course, are children. The younger, the more exposed they are, the thinner their cranium. Their brains are more moisture, water. They absorb more. They absorb at least 50% of their radiation. Children get brain cancer 5 times more than adults because of the skull. So if you have an opportunity, I would encourage you to stand up and say no thank you. But the only way you can refuse